let me tell you, it went from no taste to knock it out of the ballpark. I just
good.
added a little bit of water and I'm going to heat it up. I put a little honey in it. It's really interesting.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. Actual,
All right.
actual ginger tea is good. All right, Charlie, can you see me? I get a thumbs up. Okay, sweet. So my goal for today, I wanted to do a Rubens, like a Rubens day, and then my Rubens book, I can't find. Anyway, but Peter Paul Rubens is a Dutch painter, and he's like, very prolific. Painted a ton. This is his St. Catherine, and she's got a couple of symbols. One is the sword. What is this, like, wheel? I actually don't know much about St. Catherine. I should know more, but I don't. Anyway, I wanted to do like kind of a sampler pack today, and not draw this whole thing, but at least draw the sword. We might even be able to draw this wheel that is, the sword's like, and we'll figure out whether the sword is actually impaled into this wheel or whether it's behind it. I'm not exactly sure. Let's let Jack in here. Oh, great. I get to switch to my grid view. Excellent. Jack, are you in the house? Can I get a thumbs up or a heck yeah? Sweet. Mr. Chuckley, good to see you. Hold on, let me check my phone. Oh, great. Okay. So I think we got it. We're just waiting for Ajax. Let's see if Ajax gets to make it in. I'll keep my eye out for it. Anyway, she's got radiating lines coming out of her head. It's a view from below looking up. It's like super, super dramatic. Like I said, Jack, just coming in. I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to do the sword, and then I think this wheel, which is part of what symbolizes this saint. I assume that's how she was killed, on some kind of like spiky metal wooden wheel. But I'll look it up. Her name's it's St. Catherine, and this is a Rubens. So anyway, it'll be fun. It'll be fun to sketch at least the sword. What makes this different is that we are below looking up, kind of at both of these elements. It's hard to see at the moment, but there's a deep shadow underneath this wheel here, and it is truncated, meaning the wheel is broken, and it's but there's some really beautiful geometry with the spikes and the rivets on the side, and some nice 3D properties with the sword. It's kind of a profile of the sword. So let's see what we can do. Let's do one thing at a time. Wow.
Oh, so glad to hear that. I can't really focus on so many things at one time, and one is ideal for me.
Yeah, okay, cool. So honestly, maybe what we'll do is we'll try to get the, if you look here, I have all this extra paper. So I'm gonna have to move over when it's time for me to do the wheel, but we'll go in here. And today, again, is gonna be like a sampler pack. So let's just see what we can come up with. I may even start here so I can get the full length of the sword, but I might actually even zoom in on that sword. You guys ready to do this? All right, so let's just talk about the sword in terms of its parts. There's this, I don't know what does anybody know what the name of this thing is called? Where like the heel of the sword, it's like the base of the handle, so your finger your hand doesn't slide off the bottom. It's basically the base of the handle, and that's a sphere. Then there's a kind of like a collar, like a tight collar or a ring that helps transition from that ball into the cylindrical handle. Is it cylindrical? Is it conical? It looks like it pinches in a little bit, like at the, where those two forms connect. But it's a handle, so it's got to fit in your palm, and it's got to be relatively cylindrical. And then the real stylization, kind of like the real decorative element that comes in is is this kind of curving piece of metal. It's like a spiral and it S curves to the center, then it transitions and it spirals back out. We're going to draw that two-dimensionally, and then we'll be able to like add the thickness on the right side, and then on the right side bottom of that one. So that should be great. Then there's the sword, and the sword, it's nice because Rubens gives us like this sketchy center line. Can you see how he kind of like sketches out the middle of that sword? It means it's got two planes. So there's kind of like it's almost like a diamond shape. If you were to cut it in half, it would almost make a diamond. Let's see over here. So this is one plane. Here's the center. There's the other plane. And then it gets sharp at both ends. So if you were to look through it, that's what it would kind of be. So there's this angled plane and then this angled plane. Again, I haven't sketched anything yet. I'm just like thinking through this. And then that sword is going to start, a little bit thicker than the handle. And then it's going to run in a very long, very gradual triangle. A bit, and it might not even be a triangle. It might even be a rectangle from the handle to maybe 3/4 of the way down, and then it starts to taper in. I'm not sure, and I think it is. I mean, it passes behind this little spike down here. Spike is going to be great. Can't wait to draw this. We have to do the sword because it's awesome, but I think that spiky wheel, which is I assume is the sign of her martyrdom, is going to be particularly cool to draw. If you don't think about the horror of it. Okay. The first thing that I think we got to know is that we are below looking up at this. So as I make my first marks, I'm going to make my sword a little bit bigger, and I think I'm okay with that. So where this sphere is, the sphere is, the rounded ball at the top. But where that sphere attaches to the handle, I'm drawing like almost like this up, it concaves up, almost like a crescent moon shape. And that has a thickness. That's going to be like the transition into the handle part. Now, normally what I would do is I would set up my center line through the entire thing so that the ball, the handle, and the sword all fit on that same diagonal. So it's like, yeah, like let's do that. So I'm gonna find the middle of my, I'm looking at the angle of the sword, and then I'm gonna try and have the middle of the ball and the middle of the handle guide the angle of my sword. Whoa, cool. And this center line is, I think, the bevel. It is that little central plane. All right, groovy. You can look at her St. Catherine's arm, and you can tell that the light is coming from up above because the top plane of her arm is light. The inside is in shadow. But then there's this extra dark shadow. So not only is it coming from up above, but I think it's coming from the left because there's like this extra shadow that comes from her hand, her thumb, and the sword itself. So if you look at this ball, let me zoom in a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, you can really see it now. The left side is light. The right side is light, but there's this shadow going right down the middle of that ball. And then there's also a shadow on, an angled shadow on the handle. Look how big my handle is now. Good God. All right. So I've got this little collar. I've got my sphere. I've got my handle. I haven't really added any shadows yet. Now I want to see where the handle meets the guard, like the sword guard. And we're going to go that over here. Okay. I may run into some trouble, y'all, with how large I made this, but that's okay. I think we can go in separate drawings. So there's the S curve, the spiral S curve that meets in the middle, and then this one, spirals out. So this right side is a S curve. So let's reverse it. So we know where it meets in the middle. And then it swells this way. It reaches an S curve. So I'm doing that S. It's a backwards S, but it's an S. And then, as it gets to the top of this S, you've reached this like kind of aggressive spiral. And as that spirals, then you can reverse engineer it and just come back out the same way you came. Paying attention to the to the actual thickness of that plate. And don't think I forgot the little offshoot. I didn't. There's this little trapezoidal offshoot, which looks like it's almost looks like it's some kind of like branch that grew out of it, even though it's metal. That's really kind of nice. All right, so we've got this S curve. I haven't added any thickness to it because I want to get the whole front plate. The other side, it doesn't have the S curve aspect, but it does have a curve to it. So we're going to swell the opposite direction. And then as it, falls down, it's going to spiral. So this is the outside of it, yes. Get that spiral. And then the tight turn is what gets us the plate. So we did the top first and then the bottom on the front side, on the top side, and now we're doing the top side and then the bottom side on the lower arm. The length of my spiral looks too big on the top and could be perhaps too small on the bottom, or it might be just, well, it could be a little bit of both. Maybe it's a little bit short and then a little bit long. I'm going with it. This is essentially a warm-up. So these are the things that you don't necessarily get right. And the older I get, the more I'm like, if it still looks like a sword, like if it's in the range of dither, like, is this going to be a cool looking sword if I stick with this? I'm like, yes, it is. Is it too long compared to Rubens? Yes. Am I acknowledging it? I am. But if I didn't think it would still look like a cool sword handle, I would erase it. But I'm like stepping back, assessing it. I'm like, yeah, I can still make that look like a cool sword handle. All right. So let's do the, oh, that's amazing. I think we should
Sounds
start.
like I'm missing
I think we should
something.
start the sword. What were you gonna say, Stacey?
Oh, it sounded as if you were looking at someone's amazing sword that I was sorry to be
Somebody
missing.
started. No one's shown anything yet.
Okay.
What I was saying is that like once we start to add the thickness of the bottom of this, just say we'll do the lower one first. So we have the edge, and then we have the thickness of it. Edge and thickness, and then we come on this side and we'll do the edge and then the thickness of the spiral. What got me excited is that it looks as though the blade comes in front of the underside of the thickness of that metal guard. And I don't know if that's true. Well, I don't know if that's what the original was, but it seems like that's what Rubens drew. So I added the thickness and then I added some shadow just by toning it. This is an etching. So when you do etchings, it's a printmaking process, and some of your original shading marks sometimes bleed together, and it's, like I assume that it wasn't this dark near that thumb. I don't think Rubens made it that dark, but in the inking process, there's a certain amount of control that you don't have, that you have to kind of forfeit. But it's all good. That looks like it could be almost a spiral right here. All right, let's try the upper one. The easiest part, I think, is the right side. You can kind of really clearly see that thickness. So whether you use a couple lines and then fill it in, or just even thicken the line, that's up to you. But we're trying to get this really subtle thickness to the metal. And while we're at it, we can begin to describe the form and shadow on the handle. So conveniently, Rubens gives us, what do you think this is? What do you think that like little spiral is? Do you think that's a piece of leather?
Good question.
See where her thumb is right there? Her thumb's here and it's
Mhm.
on top of something. I'm going to leave that out for the time being. But the artist gives us these little shaded marks to help describe the cylindrical nature of the handle, as well as some shading. Same set of marks, these little curving marks run up the middle of that ball, helping to add dimension. And then, like I said, there's this funny shadow that runs like diagonally down the right side. And I'm just keep using that same mark that kind of helps define the curvature of the cylinder. And if you look at the rest of her arm, he uses the same thing. So he's using these like, he can't shade like in terms of blending, so he has to use marks. And by curving, by having these little hatch marks going in the same direction to describe the cylindrical nature of her arm. And so there's actually immediately a connection between her arm, and the handle of the sword. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And it doesn't matter whether it's a handle, really, it doesn't matter whether it's an eyeball or, a toe. A sphere is a sphere. So, or the handle of the sword. It's all, a sphere is a sphere, a handle is a handle. It's about when it's in context, and when it's, positioned in terms of other things that you can tell the difference. All right, cool. The side of the handle, because it's the right side, and even though it's probably super sharp, it still is expressed with a darker line. So the left side's in the light, the right side's in the shadow. So that right side is going to be darker. You have to zoom out in a second. Another cool thing, it looks as though the metal bar, the handle guard, looks like it throws a little shadow onto the base of that blade. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. Kind of clean. It's kind of nice. There's a side of me that makes me want to erase the this handle. The length of this handle guard is kind of ridiculous. So, but I'm using pencil. So as I get going, maybe I will in fact erase it. Okay, let's see the length of this bad boy. All right, so I'll move down and I'll zoom in. All right, so y'all, I want to keep it zoomed at this level, but you have to make your own. You have to find your own kind of like set of proportions, and the sword could be huge. You could make it a dagger. It's all about the size of the blade. So if you look at the handle, my thumb is right here. So if I'm looking at the width of my thumb is like the handle. So there's like 1, 2, 3, maybe 3.5 or 4 handle lengths in the sword. So if I'm going here, 1, 2, 3, and a little more. So I want to continue my center line. You want to make that as straight as possible, or else it'll look like a wonky piece of metal. And you want it to be really sharp, straight steel. and know that it does taper into a, it is a triangle. It's got to come to a point. Even though you don't see the exact point. Whoa, that's kind of interesting too. One of the things I just observed was the top of the sword at the base, the blade. Top of the blade is dark here, and then the left side is light. Then about halfway down, it seems to reverse, where you get the underside of the blade is dark, and then the top of the blade is light. Whether it was like truly observed or whether the artist did that to just kind of flip things and make it, not as regular. When you have the same line, the same thickness for such a long straight period, in a composition, it dulls. No pun intended, but you want your lines to be varied. And part of
Mr. Twist?
Yes, sir. Nice, Jack. Stace,
I had to add the hand. Well,
Oh,
I'm glad
Jack.
you did. I'm glad you did. I didn't want to I didn't want to seem like I was like copping out, but the position of the hands, I'm glad you drew them. They're not like Rubens's best hands ever. They're actually a little bit awkward.
yeah, I don't know why his fingers go down after the handle.
Yeah, I mean, all you're seeing
Like
is
they're
that
supposed to be covered, but they're like down here.
yeah, it's almost like it's
Yeah.
Which great.
Yeah.
It would, and I think it's, yeah. I mean, you also don't want to make the hands look. Hands are kind of like ears and noses. Like on women, if you kind of overdo them, they turn masculine really fast. Noses, ears, and hands. So you want that. I think he was like kind of pulling back on the hands a little bit to make them a little bit, less prominent and and honestly more feminine. And not
That's,
feminine,
I
not
like
feminine,
that,
but
Jack.
like active, not masculine. I think that's more about what it is. It's not about women's hands. It's just not making sure that they don't look like man hands. But I'm like looking at it in my own drawing. I'm just loving that inverse that he does, where the edge of the blade on the bottom goes light to dark, whereas the top of the blade goes from dark to light. And these are the types of things that, anybody could notice. I mean, maybe they would notice it, but you really don't unless you're actively drawing it. Those are that's the subtlety that, that I kind of live for. I'm like, you look at this for 10 years and never notice that. And then the underside of the plane, as the blade reaches the bottom, there's some vertical lines indicating the shadow side of that plane as well. So you could put those in there. Whoa. Amazing. All right, cool. I mean, look at that. That's a great little blade. It feels very like atmospheric. Like, I don't know. I didn't really do anything special. Maybe it's just kind of neat seeing the blade without the hand. I think imagine that blade, if you will, without that hand, and my drawing shows that. So if you want to see compositions and different arrangements, when you can't like erase his work, you can always just extrapolate it and sketch it yourself. All right, cool.
Yeah, I think part of the, excuse me.
No, what were we gonna say?
I think part of the beauty of the sword is in its simplicity. I mean, it looks complex because the whole piece is complex and a lot of movement. But the sword primarily, are a couple of curves and those very long straight lines.
Well, yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I mean, I think he designed the sword to match the composition. So let me zoom out a little bit, guys. This is called shape association, and artists, especially Baroque artists, where there's all these like curving movements that are going on, things try to get repeated. So even if you look at the bottom here, this bottom spiral of the handle, the same thing happens on a large scale with this main piece of fabric. Do you see the spiral right here? So it's like the main fabric, is, pinched at the fingers on this side, and then it spirals here and actually like wraps around the leg, which is kind of neat. It happens again on the inside. There's like this inside spiral that goes all the way down here. So it's like repeated. This kind of S curve in the handle, happens in these fronds. I don't know if they're feathers or if they're a particular type of plant. It also happens in her scarf. So it's like the scarf comes up and wraps in the same way that that handle does. So that kind of like design connection makes, a good relationship between, the various elements, between the fabric, between the wind, between the metal, between the fronds. Like he's just trying to find every opportunity that he can. And frankly, the hands on this side are actually a lot nicer. It's the underside of the hand, but there's a nice array of her fingers that are nicely balanced. Okay, can we get a? Does anybody else want to show what they got so far? John or Charlie? I guess Ajax never made it. Charlie, have you got your sword?
I'm still finishing up.
All right, cool. No pressure. John, are you actually here?
Yeah.
All right, sweet, man. I hadn't seen you or heard from you yet, so I'm just confirming life. Stacy, how's yours going? And Stacy, since I put all my drawings together in the portfolio, it's funny, my drawings have changed. It's like I can see them in like the context of the last year and a half. So guys, I don't know if I told you this, but the last week or so, I took all my drawings from the last year from all of my classes and I cut them down to size and then put them in a portfolio. And I had not really organized any of them. I just saved them all. I don't even think I saved all of them, but I saved most of them. And so I'm like, oh, that was good. That was bad. I've been able to reflect on all of the work in the past year and a half, really just the year actually. And it was so cool. And I guess that's what I'm saying is like, you should save your work. And, every couple months, maybe every year, put them in order in terms of your favorite, your favorite ones, favorite to least favorite. And then you can like store them away. Don't throw them away. But you could put them in a portfolio if you wanted to. I don't know. You're going to want these later. You'll be surprised how much you'll appreciate them down the road. I know my elementary and middle school work are still some of my favorite pieces I've ever done. I've done a lot. So, oh my gosh. Sorry, I didn't mean to freak out, but I just saw this cloud here and I didn't want to, I didn't never even notice the cloud. So I'm excited to do the cloud. And now that I know where the light source is coming from, it should not be hard, but I have to, good God, I have to do the cloud because that's where the, that wheel is like kind of propped up on the cloud. Is she in heaven? Maybe she's in heaven. All right, here we go. Are you guys up for doing the wheel, the spiky wheel? And you could probably even do it in context. Meaning, the sword, basically attaches to it.
Trevor, can you put your sword down just for a moment so I can see the sword in its entirety?
Yeah.
A little further down, I missed, yeah, excellent.
You want just mine or do you want both of them together?
Whatever you prefer. Thank you.
Oh,
Excellent.
thank you. No, thank you, Stace. I'm excited for this one. Just got to make sure I have enough room. All right, boys. So I think I'm going to do, yeah, it's the only thing I have. My only option is to make my sword really small, but I think that but I'm okay with that. I can live with the small sword. All right, so I think what we should do is get oriented. And the way we're going to get oriented is by establishing this spike. And it is, I have a feeling, I'll just draw it up here. I have a feeling it was a pyramid spike like this that was then hammered into like this talon shape. And my pencil actually went off root there. So this is that's like the form I'm going for. So it's like a pyramid, and then it's got 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and then it comes to a point, but then it's bent to be, to actually like hook into something. All right, yeah, so that's my idea here. So I'm going to put that relative to my sword. And then I can put the rest of the wheel in. And I don't know what to do. I'm trying to think about whether we should do I did the middle curve first. Is the middle curve. Then I'll do the underside. It's kind of nice because you can shade that bottom spike. And then it's almost like it's like a thicker shark fin.
Yeah.
I'll move this over so we're closer. All right, and I almost never sketch like this, and with the drawing on top. But I think it's gonna be okay. All right, let's just pretend that everybody's in the right spot. So I have my sword coming down. Let's just like recap it. So I have my sword, light line, dark line, dark center. Now I got my spike. Okay, good. Now the edge of the wheel is just like a curved block. So this is the top edge of the wheel. So this is the line that I'm drawing right here, this top edge of the wheel. And there's this is the weird part about this wheel, I actually have to admit, and I'm not sure what Rubens was kind of thinking offhand, or whether you're seeing 2 planes at once, because it looks like you can see a little bit of the top of the wheel, but then you can also see a lot of the bottom. So one thing's for sure, you have the square front where the wheel has been broken off. So I'm going to put that in first because I know for sure. And he's got some really nice textures that kind of make that look like broken, make it look like broken wood. So he's trying to tell us that he can see a little bit of the top. Look at that. He keeps those lines light, I'll tell you. And then
Yeah.
in the same breath, he says that, well, that you can see a little bit of the bottom as well. There's the light and the dark. I don't know if it's like maybe like a heaven and hell kind of metaphor, you know, light above, you know, dark below. I doubt it. I suspect that it is just a lighting situation, but you know, the bottom of the side of the wheel, that disappears behind these clouds. We'll get into the clouds later, I suspect. Wow. Okay, great. All right, so we got the edge, we got the bottom of the wheel. It's disappearing behind the clouds. I'm looking for easy answers right here, easy placement answers. And there may be a correlation between the spike and the rivet. So I'm going to maintain that relationship, at least at the moment. So there's the spike here, the rivet below. The rivet is a nice square, which does have some dimension, but we'll talk about it. The one next to it has a lot more dimension. But let's do the second spike where we have this, you know, the bottom. And then we'll do the curve of the edge, just like we did. We did that curve first, and we did the bottom. And we were able to shade the darkness of that spike. Then, of course, the top. Cool. The first spike is bigger than the second spike. The one I just did, it may not be true in my drawing, but it's definitely true in the original. Whoa, I didn't even see that too. Where there would be logically another spike, she's stepping on it. Yikes. We'll get into that in a second. Okay, let's do this other rivet that's below. I'm going to start off with a square, but then it does appear to go into a pyramid. And you can really tell that it's a pyramid by the shadow that it's casting. The cloud comes in front, and then there is like another rivet along that curve. We really haven't talked about the side, you know, the plane of the wood that the rivets are actually resting on. But it's the side of the wood, and he is, you know, describing it as probably a slightly darker object, but the side of it is still in the light. So he has these parallel lines that indicate that it's darker, but it might not necessarily be in shadow. The deep shadow is really the underside. And then in some of these, you know, the broken wood, the damaged wood markings.
Trevor,
Yeah.
is it possible to move what you're drawing to the right and the source to the left, so that as you were drawing, your hand is not covering the source?
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a way for me to do that. And you're right, Stace. That's how I started out. Yeah, I should have stuck with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's this jagged edge on that side of the wood. There's some like contours that are, you know, going X direction and Y direction. And then there's even some, in this corner, there's like this overhang, which goes really dark. Fascinating, actually. Some of these textures. Oh, right before Stacy made that comment, I had originally the first rivet was just a square. And then I darkened the right side of the square and the bottom of the square. And that began to suggest a little bit of dimension. And I think the same thing is true for the third one. Cast shadow, and then overall darker. There's kind of like a, there's 4 rivets total. And each one has very different properties. The last one is very, very dark as it passes behind and goes down all the way to the ankle. Oh my goodness, look at that. We're not gonna actually sketch the ankle, but you almost want to think about the clouds that we're putting in here as like miniature arms or handles or spheres. So each little puff can be a sphere. Each little row of clouds can be like a curving handle. There could be big puffs, which would be large spheres. There could be large handles with these bracelet lines. There can be little handles with those bracelet lines. And some of those clusters, look like it seems like they overlap a little bit. But some of you all, I know that certainly, well, I guess definitely Jack, when we did those clouds last year, these little bracelets, these little XY curving moments are allowed to like describe both shadow and the fullness of this water vapor, which, for all purposes is, kind of awkwardly placed. I mean, in terms of nature, it's made to look like it's from another dimension. What's that, Jack?
I decided to just make a twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
And
A
no
twist
pun,
on
no
it.
pun, no pun intended.
I wish.
And I made
wish
it
it was
the
intended.
sword and the stone. I
Oh,
remember this.
yes.
Yeah,
Nice. And I like the smaller stone and shadow. Sword and
great.
stone.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Rather, and that's the other thing. My sword was so thick at the base. Here, if I zoom out right here, my spike was even wider than the sword. So like mine actually is showing up behind the spike.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is as well.
The idea too, gentlemen, is once you get a sense of how the kind of the vocabulary of how to make the cloud or make the spike or make the rivet or make the wheel, like the wood on the wheel, if yours is different, just modify it and make yours work better. Like my clouds, I'm almost like reinventing the orientation of these clouds, but I understand how to make the clouds feel puffy with this particular language. So not every cloud is made this way. There's most clouds are made from tone, like blending these out. And I don't even know if I don't even know if I'm successful necessarily making them look like clouds, but if it's St. Catherine coming down from heaven, you kind of need some clouds. I don't have that same context. I mean, if you look at my drawing, we don't know anything about. I guess some people might recognize the wheel as a symbol for that saint, but they'd have to really, they'd have to like really know their stuff. Anyway, or it would have to be like their religion or something. Okay, so here we go. Now, hopefully you can see all of what we've been doing. It's a little bit smaller, probably harder to see, but at least it's all together. And if you wanted to add more or take something away.
Wow, these clouds are really quite something.
They're good.
Well, the other thing that I think is worth noting that you have talked about quite frequently,
Yes.
for instance, while we're drawing the clouds, to literally think of a cloud and clouds so that your mark making more accurately resembles what you're thinking.
I thank you, Stacy. Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
you wouldn't believe it how your intention and in terms of like actually trying to do something, affects the look of your final drawing. I mean, that has so many applications across the board. But by just being like, I'm drawing a cloud, it's going to look like a cloud. By thinking about clouds, imagining their nature, imagining their fluffiness, imagining the time of day, imagining the light source, all of that stuff. As you make these marks and you have cloud in your mind, the clouds will appear more like clouds. I don't know how to describe it. It's an actual thing. I think it's just the power of intention on like a microcosm, a micro level. Same thing with like the rivet. You can have square in your head, but you can have like metal as well. If you even these little lines that are on the side plane of the wheel, I'm thinking that it's like this thick, heavy mahogany. I didn't almost buy it because it was too expensive, but I was in a shop that had handcrafted wood products, and there was this box that had a bear's head carved in it, and the
Oh,
box was
wow.
only like this big, and I swear it weighed like at least 10 pounds. I mean, it was so heavy and so well, like the quality of the wood was so good. And that honestly, the quality of the carving was really good too. There's probably like 6 or 7 other boxes, and none of them came close to the quality of this bear. And I think they were done by the same artist. But I couldn't justify the expense with my current situation. But it was beautiful.
Did you take a picture of it?
No, I didn't even take a picture of it. I should have. It was so heavy in my mind's eye. Like it was so
Right.
blazoned into my memory that I didn't even think. It was like one of those things where I'm like, I wouldn't even think to take a picture because I was like, oh, I'll never forget this.
Yeah.
And then usually when things like that happen, they stick around in my mind for a while. And then when I go back, if it's still there and it's still, if it's still something that I've, thought of for like a long period, I can then justify it. It's not like it's not like a major purchase on a whim.
Wow, Trevor, you have done so much.
What, today?
I feel like I got to get myself in motion here. I've got to
Well, we still have
get on it.
we still have 10 minutes worth of class. That's why I'm like, I wonder if we should just like stick with this image and draw another aspect of it. We could draw the radiating lines from her head. We could draw the fronds. These are kind of nice. That's really pretty. Actually, yeah, let's do that. In 10 minutes, I'm going to try to draw this other. I'm going to zoom in. But there's this, what she's holding in her hand. And Stacy, would you mind, Stacy, Googling St. Catherine?
Sure. No,
And
I
then
mean, no,
see
I
what-
don't mind.
and ask what the symbols of St. Catherine are. And it's CATHERINE. Symbols of St. Catherine. And we'll find out what is actually in her hands here.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Wow. Breaking wheel, crown, sword. So this is Catherine of Alexandria.
Okay.
And anyway,
No, that's important. That's important.
1 second.
As she's doing that, I'm gonna imagine that see how her wrist is bent here? The main gesture is the top of these, I'm gonna call them feathers. The top of the feathers is the S curve. And I don't need to show the sword to show that it is the same S curve as the handle. So my handle expresses that. So I'm gonna pretend that the feathers are passing behind the sword. And then I'm gonna get my first line is gonna be the S curve of the feathers going behind the sword. And hopefully you can tell that like it's the exact same gesture as on the handle. And that was not by accident. I mean, Rubens wasn't like doing that, you know, for his health. He's doing it because he wanted unity. When you can have things that are made out of metal and things that are made out of feathers that have the same movement, that's pretty good. There's a lot of unity that happens there on a design level. And then you have, you know, beauty tends to come, you know, beauty in painting tends to come in like theme and variation. So the S curve is the theme, the variation is the material. And then the position on the page.
Oh,
And the scale, actually.
so there's,
So these fronds are a lot bigger, the handle's a lot smaller. So there's a proportional scale difference. What's that, Stace?
there's much to be said about St. Catherine. So talking about the wheel, in and of itself, it's a symbol of martyrdom, ascension, creation, and destruction.
Wow.
So the wheel is a symbol named after St. Catherine, who was a saint and martyr from the 4th century. It simply states that it's a wheel with curved knife blades on the outer rim.
Mhm.
She was a noted scholar and princess. When she was 14, she had a vision of Mary and Jesus as a child and became a Christian and converted over 1,000 people to Christianity. Let's see some of the other symbols.
Whoa, that's cool.
Why was she a martyr? Because there's a reason, probably.
Well, hold on just a sec. Anyone who came to visit her was instantly converted to Christianity, including Maxentius's wife. Saint Catherine came out of her cell seemingly unscathed, and Maxentius ordered her to be put to death by a spiked wheel. St. Catherine touched the wheel and it shattered.
Wow.
Maxentius then proposed marriage and St. Catherine rebuked him. Maxentius then ordered her to be beheaded. All this happened when she was 18.
So she she
Okay,
basically
another thing.
converted the king's wife to Christianity, and he didn't like that.
Yes.
What was the what? Keep reading if you don't mind, because I'm trying to find out what.
No.
it is
Another thing.
What I'm drawing.
ano-
on here.
Well, here it is. Another St. Catherine's wheel is a firework that spirals around when lit. It produces colored flames and sparks in a circular motion. So is
No.
that a feather or is that a flame? Or is
No.
that none of the above?
I mean, it looks like now it looks like
This
a
is-
flame. Looks like a flame to me.
Yes. Same here. This
Whoa.
is thought to symbolize the ascension into heaven and the circular steps that are taken to get there. The fire symbolizes creation and destruction.
Mr. Twist, with my
Yeah.
sword being in like the stone, it really makes it seem like there's like a soul inside the sword, and it's just like coming out with this flame thing.
Did you do the flame?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted to
That's
draw.
good. This is
Let's take
like
a look.
super powerful. I'm like very moved right now.
Oh, wow. Really cool.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to show at this time?
It's just some serious art stuff going on.
Oh,
So it's
there are no
spirals, right?
mistakes.
So
Just
I'm gonna go.
accidents. Oh, wow. It's not Kimberly. I know that. Please tell me your name.
It's John.
Charlie.
Oh
John.
no, that's Charlie. That's Charlie. All right, hold on, guys. I'm just
Can
gonna
you
stop.
hold
I'm
that
just gonna
down?
stop. I'm
Just
just gonna stop the share so I can see him up close.
perfect. Wow.
Don't
These
don't take it
flames
down.
are
I'm gonna.
great.
All right, I pinned you. Sweet. Yeah, man. And like
Yeah.
even now that we can see that it is fire, like you can take your, this is the same way that I was talking about the when you draw the clouds, the fire, if you think fire as you're drawing that. I was thinking feathers, so mine kind of have like a peacock feather kind of feel. But then at the very end, when I found out that they were flames, I changed the type of drawing. That's cool, Charlie. I love it. You hold it up a little higher. I missed the base of it. Nice. Those spikes are sweet too. All right, so Jack, will you hold yours up one more time? I'm going to. I just stopped the share, so I actually got to see it. Thank you, Charlie. Nice. Yeah, and those flames, the way that he drew them, they conform to the same lighting arrangement. So at the base of your flame coming out of the hand, that's coming out of the blade, you have that light dark ratio, but that can continue all the way up into the rest of the flames if you keep going on it. Nice rocks too. All right, John, are you in the house? Did you get to sketch any of it?
Yes.
Let's see what you got.
I went to the bathroom though, so I didn't get all of it.
Okay.
No problem.
Yes. Oh, you did that. You did the little. the
Oh,
small part.
wow.
I'm glad you did.
Oh, I
So-
really like that.
The wheel.
I like how you made
looks like
that
a,
really wrap around nicely.
the wheel looks a little like a bull with the.
Nice.
See the bull and the horn with the eye, and like these little teeth.
Yes.
I didn't get to do all the
Mhm.
boxes.
Yeah.
I
no,
can
that's-
do
that's
the
fine.
one extra horn. And yeah, got
Yeah,
most of it.
But yeah, you got the. I mean, and you did the whole. Now I'm wondering if I made a mistake by not putting in that extra piece of metal on the handle, because I think that the way that
I know. I want
the way
to
that
put
that
that
metal
in.
spirals around the handle is like the way that the flames spiral around, her hand, and then also the fabric like around her leg. So I don't know. It looks good, really good.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, that was good. I think we might have a couple extra people joining next week, so look out for that. And then some of you I'll see tomorrow, and then some of you guys I'll see next week. Great work, thank
May
you.
I
It
see
sounds like
your-
That was really hard. That was really hard, and Rubens is just to be able to extrapolate that amount of content in that short amount of time. I really appreciate this class a great deal. So, Stacy, thank you for all
Oh,
your
nice.
help in reading that out loud. I could never.
Oh, my goodness. Of
Couldn't
course.
do it without you.
Of course.
All right, guys. Have a
My
great week.
pleasure. Everybody have a great week.
Bye, y'all.